Hey everybody, Matt Barton here with this week's Broker Minute or Two. And today I want to talk a little bit about specifically in the REPC, the section that governs water. And what I mean by that is culinary and secondary or irrigation water. And it seems to be a point that is not well understood by a lot of our peers. And so I want to make sure that we lead the charge in the world of knowledge and so we can do well for our clients and avoid problems. So let's start with water rights and shares. What is the difference? I'll make this quick. There's a lot more to this, but this is a broker minute or two. So this is something I ran across. One of the biggest differences between water shares and rights is that water rights are considered real property, and conversely, shares are typically referred to as personal property. Water rights require a deed to be filed with your local county recorder's office. Shares do not have that requirement. And furthermore, the term water share is dictated by individual companies, and it may just reflect what portion of their right as a water company you are entitled to. Now, let's back up here for a second. If you've ever worked with a builder or a developer, quite often if they're going to do a subdivision, the city will require that they provide a certain number of water rights. So in the state of Utah, all water is public, right? It's owned by the public, and then the government can then sell off certain rights to individuals, but it's allegedly all accounted for through the state engineer's office. So even when we do a well on property that we own, we have to get a permit from the state engineer to draw water from the aquifer for an area. And then when we deal with water shares, I'm going to use an example that's common down here in Utah County. There's strawberry water, right? And it's not a flavor. It's from Strawberry Reservoir. So a company has gone out and secured certain water rights for strawberry water, and then they can sell off shares of their rights. So when you're a builder and a developer and a city says, well, we need 20 shares of water, or so many acre feet of water, you have to provide them shares, certificates, saying you have rights from the state to access that water, not only as the subdivision, but now the subdivision within the city. So that's just a brief tutorial. I know there's a lot more to it, so don't beat me up on that. So what does it mean for our REPC? Let's go back to the REPC here. Okay, in the purchase contract, right? Section 1.4 is really where it starts to govern, but it even talks about it in Section 1. It says the property referenced above, described above, together with the included items and water rights / water share. So whether it's real property or personal property, and especially as it's further called out in Section 1.4, if there's no specific exclusions, then they're going to be included with the offer, right? And this is where Section 1.4 is probably the most descriptive, right? It says the purchase price of the property shall, not it would be nice, shall, that's strong contract language, shall include all water rights and or water shares, if any, and here's the if. In the world of contracts, pay attention to the words if and or. They're very powerful in contracts. So if sets up a condition. So all those shall be included if the following condition is met. That they are the legal source of the seller's current culinary water service or irrigation water service, right? And if that condition is met, then they will be conveyed at closing via the appropriate deed or other legal instrument transferring water shares, right? Rights versus shares. Not only that, if you go further down in Section 7, which is our seller's disclosures section, item I reaffirms this, right? Evidence, part of your seller's disclosures is evidence of any water rights and or shares referenced in Section 1.4. And so the hurdle is already set. The requirement is already set. If you're using something for current culinary or irrigation, then by default, it's in the contract, and not only is it part of the contract, you also have to provide disclosures in your seller's disclosures, which, as you might imagine, I'm going to jump over real quickly to the updated seller's disclosures as of a couple of years ago, and there's a lot more detail. Roughly speaking, Section 6 deals with culinary water, and Section 7 deals with irrigation water. And within each one, there's subcategories. Who's the government entity? Is there a water company, right? And if it's a private water right, meaning like a well or a spring, there's requirements here. So I'm going to do culinary first, and it's largely the same for irrigation. So if there's a water company, please attach a copy of any water share certificates in your possession, right? And you don't get a pass if it's held at a safe deposit box at a bank. That is still your possession. If there's a well on the property, then you need to provide a certificate. The state engineer has approved that well, right? And there's a lot more in here. I'm just hitting the real highlights on this. And then when it comes to irrigation water, just dealt with one the other day, quite literally yesterday. And the agent on the other side was trying to tell me that these guys bought this water share before they owned the property. Therefore, it's not attached to the property. And we try and be polite when we're educating other people, and had to go back through section 1.4 of the REPC, right? Let's go back up here, where it doesn't say if it's attached. That's not a requirement of the contract. The requirement is if you're using it either as culinary or as current irrigation water, it's in. Now, a point I made to the agent on the other side on this deal was, and not only that, the second half of paragraph 1.4 says the following water rights and shares, if applicable, are specifically excluded from the sale, which then reaffirms that the first half says if you don't put an exclusion, everything that's being used is part of this contract. And no, you can't say, well, the contract deals with real property, and since a share is private or personal property, it's not part of the deal. The fact that both parties signed off on section 1.4 brought the personal right of a water share into the contract and was agreed to contractually. So coming full circle, know this: when you take a listing, one of the questions you should ask, especially if you have a property that's on acreage, there may be a water share or water right involved. If there's a well or anything like that, you probably ought to have a little more in-depth discussion with your seller as to what the configuration of those water rights or shares are, so that you can speak intelligently to them. And when an offer is submitted, you can capture it correctly. And if you're representing a buyer, if you see there's an intricate irrigation system and a drip system and other things on a big piece of property, probably our due diligence of reasonable care should be asking, how is that mechanism being utilized, or where are you getting the water for that drip system, and make sure you incorporate it in the contract. So hope that helps. Let me know if you have any specific questions on water rights or shares, and I hope you have a great day.